Why, hello there. Welcome back to the channel. So today, let's delve further into Jupiter as a planet and how it relates to the husband. And specifically, let's discuss some practical elements on how you are able to discern what kind of husband a man will be by looking at his chart. This is very beneficial, practical stuff. You know, we talk a lot about principles on my channel. And so this will give you specific things you can look for to be able to formulate an assessment of your own initiative. So the first thing to do is to gauge the dignity of Jupiter and Jupiter's signs. So Jupiter, of course, rules Sagittarius and Pisces. So something that you can very simply do right off the bat, like kind of number one thing, is to look at the sign in which Jupiter is placed and look at what planets are in the signs which Jupiter rules. So what planets are sitting in Sagittarius and Pisces. So this will give you an immediate feel and grasp for sort of like the baseline condition of this man's relationship with Jupiterian energy, with the husband role archetype energy. Then you want to look at the sign in which Jupiter is placed, the lord of that house. So say Jupiter is in Cancer, exalted. Cancer is ruled by the moon. So you want to look at the condition of the moon. So say, for example, you're looking at a man's chart and you're like, wow, his Jupiter is exalted. That's wonderful. But then their moon is debilitated. The highest expression that Jupiter Cancerian energy can reach is going to be a bit inhibited. Whereas if their moon is exalted, moon is in friendly signs, in really good dignity, you're going to notice kind of like the full promise of that Jupiter and Cancer energy will be able to express itself. All right, so the significator of Jupiter, which is when Jupiter is in that sign, the ruler of the sign which Jupiter sits, analyze the condition of that planet. From there, you want to also look at the houses which Jupiter naturally rules. So the 9th house and the 12th house. Now, of course, for every ascendant, Jupiter is going to actually rule practically the houses in which his signs are sitting. So wherever Sagittarius and Pisces are, he's going to rule those houses. But and in addition to that, Jupiter naturally is the significator for the 9th and the 12th houses. So we want to look at those because, the 9th house in a person's chart is going to show what kind of principles they resonate with. What is the meaning of their life? What is their belief system? So you want to look at the sign that's in the 9th house. Is that sign and the planet which rules that sign friendly with Jupiter? All right. And then you also want to look at the 9th house lord and where that lord is sitting in that man's chart. And so with these points, right off the bat, you're going to have a kind of grasp on a significant portion of that man's level of integrity. All right. As well as kind of the archetype style and flavor of that man's perception of his role as a husband. So let's give you some examples. So let's say you have someone whose Jupiter is in Leo. So a man who has Jupiter in Leo, generally speaking, is going to feel like his role as a husband is to be magnanimous, charming, generous, regal in nature. So he's going to want to dress well, portray himself well. He's going to want to be kind of like a Prince Charming, romantic type of person. He might have that kind of like, like flower in the mouth kind of dynamic, maybe not literally, but it's a very kind of passionate, charming, sweep you off your feet kind of archetype, which he'll naturally kind of dwell in when he moves himself into the space of being a husband. Part of the mentality will be something like, well, the best way that I can fulfill my role as a man, as a husband to this woman, is to be very dynamic. It's to show up and look my best, do my best, to make the best appearance and impression of myself. It's kind of like if you imagine royals. They're dressed well, they're going to walk down the red carpet, they're always going to be presenting this regal air. Everyone's like, wow, like, look at them. Aren't you so happy and proud to be married to this royal prince, this royal king? That's the kind of energy that they will want to create. So as a man, they'll naturally feel very resonant with a woman who's able to see those qualities in them and really appreciate them. Kind of a woman who's dazzled by his regal, royal, kind of masculine energy. And, you can anticipate that a husband who has Jupiter in Leo, generally speaking, is going to be someone who has a lot of integrity, because Jupiter and Sun are friends. Sun and Jupiter are both Sattvic planets. Both Sun and Jupiter have to do with integrity. So we're going to also talk in another video about how, when we're talking about looking at integrity in general for a person, a lot of it has to do with studying their Jupiter and Sun positions. All right. So when Jupiter is in Leo, they're going to kind of pride themselves on being sort of like these royal, regal figures who have integrity. They're going to have that good reputation. They're going to really thrive on that. You can anticipate them to be generous. A good king who's well respected and loved and appreciated is generous with his subjects, right? And so you're going to see that he's going to love to probably give gifts, to be very magnanimous in various ways. He's going to be like, see how generous I am, see how good of a ruler I am, in these senses. And so in many ways, it's a very good placement for a husband. And for a woman who wants to kind of be doted on, to kind of have a sort of regal relationship where she's charmed all the time, that's a pretty cool archetype to have. So now let's talk about, say, for example, Jupiter in Aries. Now, Jupiter in Aries is going to be the kind of husband who prioritizes taking action on behalf of the wife. Now, someone who really prioritizes acting and fighting for the principles and values of that woman and of the relationship. So, say, for example, somebody is, mistreating that woman or whatever, he's going to be like, hey, my duty as a husband right now is to kind of stand up and be like, boom, I'm going to defend her. I'm going to fight for her rights. I'm going to fight for this value. And, also he's going to be someone who's really going to prioritize and value and kind of going out there and accomplishing things, conquering things for the sake of the wife and of the family. So he's going to be a go-getter in a lot of ways. He's going to be ambitious in a lot of ways. So if you're looking for an ambitious husband, someone who is going to accomplish for the sake of the relationship, reach some type of great height, conquer something, that's a very good indicator. So we talked a lot about Jupiter and Cancer in the Jupiter Husband series, or at least talked about it to some extent anyway. And so, with that kind of a placement, you can see a husband who really prioritizes and values the home and the family and emotional care. And so, of course, there's a lot of factors which play into the ultimate expression of this is. We talked about the house lord of whatever, like the lord of whatever sign Jupiter is sitting in, Jupiter's other signs. There's so many things that could kind of influence like how well this is expressing itself. So, like, for example, we talked about how there's all these wonderful benefits of Jupiter in Aries, right? Well, what if there are some struggles, and other elements that are related to that, like wherever Mars is positioned, or, say there's a Saturn aspect or something like that. Well, they may be able to go out and accomplish for the marriage, for the wife, and they may be able to achieve and conquer. But maybe they're lacking a bit in the emotional support, emotional care. Maybe they've got like a Saturn K2 or something like that in Cancer. And so they might be like working really hard. They're going to work. And they're like, look, I'm fulfilling my role as a husband. I'm doing my job. I'm going out here. I'm achieving. I'm conquering for the sake of the marriage. But she's like, yes, I see that. You are working very hard, and I appreciate that. But also, I'm feeling a bit emotionally neglected. I need some emotional care. And he's like, well, maybe he doesn't perceive that as part of his job as the husband, because he feels like he's fulfilling his job by being the Jupiter in Aries. So see, you have to have an understanding of how all these things interconnect. And understanding, like, as a woman, like what your needs are from a husband. There are some women who they really need a go-getter, high-achieving, high-status male. There are some women who are like, I just need him to love me and care for me. We have, enough to pay for our living expenses, to have a comfortable life. But the main thing is emotional nourishment. And there's some women who are just like, I just need him to go out there and just like, be the absolute best at whatever he does and to succeed so that we can reach a high status. So you have to know yourself as a woman, know what it is you value in a man. And you can do that by studying your Jupiter, and looking at your other masculine planets in your chart to see how you relate to male energy, studying your Dara Karaka to have an understanding of what you really need from your mate, your seventh house, things like that. But you're getting kind of an idea, hopefully, of the way in which these archetypes, by looking at whatever sign Jupiter is sitting in, can express itself. Jupiter in Taurus is going to be a man who really prioritizes providing a sort of sensual, physical value as part of a husband. So like his role as a husband is to make wealth. So he doesn't necessarily need to be a high achiever. He doesn't need to be the most well-known or to conquer and compete with everybody. He just has to provide a lot of wealth. So he could do that in some quiet way where he's been at the same job, or he's doesn't matter so much about the competitive element like it does with Jupiter and Aries, where it's out to be the best. It's so much about, here's good food, here's good clothing, I have all this wealth in the bank account. And accumulating that type of material wealth and assets will be where his role and his value is as a husband, like how he thinks he's fulfilling his role. Jupiter in Gemini is a little bit like kind of a little kid energy to some extent, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But, they will fulfill their idea of the husband, because, Mercury, which rules Gemini, has this youthful energy. It's kind of like being a child. Also, Sun has to do with children as well. But also Mercury has to do with this youthfulness, this childlike nature, this kind of playfulness, is like kind of not taking things seriously in a lot of ways. And so Jupiter in Gemini will have a bit of a challenge to take the role of the husband seriously. They'll want to, in some sense, be kind of like a best friend, and can sometimes even, like as a man who has Jupiter in Gemini, be in dynamics where, they'll want the woman maybe to be a bit more of the leadership role, or they won't want to fully step into their fully like Jupiterian kind of masculine role where they're handling all the responsibilities. They'll kind of want to have fun. And they'll feel like they're fulfilling their role as the husband by communicating and expressing knowledge. So they may be like filling their partner's mind with information of some sort. And that is what really makes them feel like they're in that role and fulfilling that dynamic. So whatever it is, like you can look at where their Mercury is and where their Virgo is and what house their Gemini is sitting in to kind of get a grasp on, like what type of knowledge they're communicating. But they kind of feel like, in some sense, like educating, having fun with, and being good friends with their partner satisfies that condition. So these are very, very brief touches on these energies. These are certainly, each and every one of these signs has to be explored in great detail. There's pros and cons. And all of these different points that we brought up about, like, looking at the ninth house, looking at what Sagittarius and Pisces are doing, all of those things are going to have a big influence on the type of husband he's going to be. And so also, it's important to note that a lot of a man's masculinity can be seen from the sun and from Mars. And a lot of like the role of a husband has a lot to do with responsibility, like being able to build things, being able to be committed, have these good principles. And a lot of that has to do with Saturn as well. And so you can kind of see, in general, a lot more about a man by studying Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and kind of like seeing like what is his kind of comprehensive masculine archetype. How do all these things come together cohesively to tell me who he is as a man? Because there are men, for example, who are very, very good husbands. Say they're loyal, they have the right principles, they're faithful to their wives, they provide, but maybe they're not very masculine men. And there are very, very masculine men who are not good husbands. They have all this masculine energy, and that at the same time, like when it comes to being able to be a good guide, to be a good role model, to be a man of integrity, they might struggle in those areas. So it's very important to understand how each of these planetary energies plays into masculinity and being a husband, being able to kind of distinguish and discern to some extent, like the distinction between masculinity itself and what it means to be a husband, because they're deeply interrelated. There's also a distinctness to it as well, right? And I think that women, in our society have struggled somewhat to kind of make that discernment, because they'll find these very masculine men. They're like, okay, he's confident, he's hardworking, he's successful. That means he's probably a good husband. Look at his masculine energy. It seems like things are in order. But then that person, high performance CEO or actor or some other kind of job, lawyer, they're, not able to stay committed. They don't have good morals. They might have good morals in the courtroom, but then they've, cheated on their wives several times. And so it's just like those kinds of struggles you'll be able to understand better by studying the charts in this way. All right. So I hope this helps you to have better insight into how to gauge what a man's husband archetype is. And if you have any questions, please post them in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer them and flesh this out more and more as time goes on. We're going to make more videos about this kind of stuff as well. So thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon.